Rich Porcio, TopVelocity.net. I'm going to call this little episode Rebuilding David Aardsma. I have the hardest working man in baseball, David Aardsma. Not only that, probably one of the nicest, coolest guys, respectable guys I've met. So it's been really awesome working with him. He's been here for about 4 months.
Since October.
Since October. And it's been awesome for me to have really someone that I can do a cool case study on at his level. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about his career, just so you know who he is if you haven't looked him up already. David's played almost a full 8 years of big league ball. Yeah, he's played with a lot of teams. I'll try to hit them all. It's going to be the Cubs. Well, actually, you came up with the Giants, right? You went to the Cubs. No, I'm probably not going to get the order after that. Or the Mariners?
White Sox.
You just do it.
Giants came up with the Cubs. Came up with the Giants in 2004. Giants traded to the Cubs, traded to the White Sox, traded to the Red Sox, traded to the Mariners, and then I signed with the Yankees. And then I was with the Mets. I also spent some minor league time with the Marlins, spring training with the Indians, and last year with the Cardinals in 2014 in AAA.
Unbelievable. Not many guys can say that, right? So he came to me, kind of his story at this point. He came to me, and he'll probably fill in the details where I leave off. He has, towards the end of his career, he's been through some injuries, had some surgeries, hips, Tommy John surgery, and was losing performance or ball speed, and was concerned. He's been concerned over the past couple of years that has been struggling to get it back, because David was a guy, if you look on Brooks Baseball, in the prime of his career, he was a high 90s guy, so one of the harder throwers in the game. So falling down into last year, AAA with the Cardinals, 88 to 92. Obviously not where he wanted to be at 32 years old. So came to me with the concern. First, the way he kind of tested me out was had me look at video and asked me what I was seeing. And what I was seeing was a significantly a lower half that just wasn't what it used to be. And he truly believed the same thing. And so that's what it was. What were we going to do? So he came out, kind of just looked around, saw what I was doing, talked about the programs, the 3X Pitch Velocity programs, what we do. He liked the approach. It was new. It was different. And he liked that he was learning stuff. I mean, what else could you say that you were looking for?
Well, it was tough. I felt good. I felt strong, but for some reason the ball was just not coming out. And I was consistently hurting myself. And so I needed to make a change. I needed to find out why I was hurting myself, why the ball's not coming out any hard than it used to. I used to be throwing 95 to 100 really without a problem when I wanted to. And now I'm trying to, as hard as I can, as absolutely hard as I can, hit 92. And, I just wasn't happy with it. I was getting hurt, and I wanted to get better. I want to have a good, healthy season. And if I could increase velocity, that's what I want to do, because I know if I'm healthy, that I'm good and I can pitch. And I wasn't able to stay healthy.
Yeah. So what you're going to learn is that we've got him back on the road. That's the really exciting news. Is he where we want to be? No, not quite yet, but he's got a lot of time. But the good news is I feel like we've reversed his regression, and now we're progressing back to who he was, which is a really big plus. So, I said he's the hardest working man in baseball because this guy was here, rain or shine, every day like clockwork, in his routines, knocking it out, and letting me really beat the crap out of him. So that was the coolest part. He let me beat the crap out of him. And what I learned about David is probably one of the most durable athletes I've ever been around. I mean, you literally could beat the crap out of him, and he would bounce back every single time. I don't think you ever missed a day for being sick in 4 months. No,
I don't think I did at all either. No, but what it is I'm 33 years old. I've been banged up, like we talked about. I'm declining in my performance. And if I want to play this game any longer, if I want to continue, and like I see myself as not giving up, that I needed to work hard at that. I need to put in those hours to make significant changes. You can't just make little changes like that by not putting in the time and the work. And I wanted to make sure that if this didn't work, that I had no questions about what ifs or what went wrong. It was only that I couldn't do it, not that I couldn't try.
Yeah, and just my assessment of what I've learned from him and where he is still a big league pitcher. I believe he still today can throw in the high 90s. He just needs to keep progressing on this road. So that's what we're going to learn about. So first I want to look at, off camera here, first I want to look at mobility. So when someone comes in, like a velocity camp or comes into work, I want to measure them out, evaluate them. So I want to see, and this is something he's done all of his career as far as the mobility and performance stuff. The biomechanics stuff, he really hasn't measured out at this level. So first I want to measure mobility, then I want to measure performance, basically how your body moves, basically speed, strength, power. Then we'll get into the biomechanics stuff, and I want to measure that out. And I want to see progression. So we got him when he first came in, and then we've seen him progress through the months here. Like I said, we're dealing with 4 months. But really quick, we've got the first time we measured him was 11/3, November 3rd, and then the last time we measured him was 1/12. So it's February now. We haven't done a final assessment because we could do that, but at this point, this is enough data for right now, and we know where he needs to be is mainly biomechanical right now. Okay, so he came in, some quick overviews here. Dorsiflexion, that's the ability how he moves the ankle. We can see when he first came in, he was at 18 active, degrees of active, and then it progressed to 22. In the left side, we've got some big passive increases too. So we saw an increase in dorsiflexion. That's going to be in the ankle. We saw another, I'm just going to highlight some, hip internal rotation significantly increased. We went from 25 of active and pretty much close to 25 in both hips, hip internal, to 50 in the left, 37 in the right. So a lot of gain in internal. We lost a little bit in external, not much. It went from 45 to 40, 42 to 30. And that's mainly because when you gain all that internal, just like the shoulder, if you gain a lot of internal, you'll lose external. You gain external, you lose internal. So that's what was going on. But because of how we want to load the drive leg, and most importantly, which was where we wanted to get him back, gaining that internally in the right leg was really significant.
And that's something we worked on every day, every single day, driving and in extra stretches, extra mobility work. We were working on that internal and really making sure I was getting that, because that's something that if I don't have internal rotation, if you don't have an internal rotation, you can't get your body in the position you need to be.
Also, too, and something we can talk about, we'll talk about in the biomechanics, but he was, if you look at my drive leg styles video, he was a knee slammer. So he slammed his knee really, really insanely aggressively. And most of his tears are the little, I mean, they were microscopic tears, a little phrase, right?
Yes, tears, adductor tears. So I was tearing my adductor consistently over time. From 2008, I tore it, 2010, 2011, 2013, 2014, I actually finally tore bad enough I had to have surgery on it. So that was one of the significant things that I can't do. What made me great? It was one of those things that made me really good. I threw really hard doing it, but I couldn't continue that for the rest of my career.
So the big adjustment biomechanically that he wanted was to get what I advised into more internal rotation. So seeing the internal rotation coming around was for us progression. We wanted to see the hips overall start to gain mobility. We saw an extension here. We actually lost an extension. Did we lose that much in extension?
Yeah, I think it was a tight band. I think it was a little tight back there.
So we lost an extension. We gained inflection though. So like you said, you typically, if you're going to lose one, you gain the other. So flexion is the ability to throw the leg out. We lost an extension. Trunk rotation was a big gain. Now that's, once the hips are through, we've got to be able to separate, close the shoulders off. That was another big thing we were focused on. If the three things I focus on, it's going to be hip internal, which we gained in. It's going to be trunk rotation right, if that's your dominant arm, which we gained in from 75 to 96. And then shoulder external rotation, and we gained in that from 80 to 125. So we gained really where we focus on, which was good. I don't like loss, but sometimes it happens when you're gaining in the other areas, you're losing some areas. All right, now into performance. So we can look at his strength, his speed, his power. We can see total body strength when he first came in. We measured that with a dynamometer, where you basically stand, you squat, hold onto the bar. You try to stand up as hard as you can, and you can even pull your arms. So it gets a good assessment of total body strength. It was 430 pounds, and then it went to 540. His body weight Came in at 211. He's up to 221 right now. So we saw the increase there. Big increase in strength, big increase in lean mass.
That was a 211. That was a soft 211 because I was 205 I was 195 pounds during the year when I had surgery, and I basically ate myself to 211 without necessarily even working out, without working hard. There was probably an added 12, 13 pounds of body fat in that 211. So really, actually, probably the real number is 195 to 221 in the middle of training.
Another plus for him, because he's a post TJ guy. He had Tommy John surgery when?
2011, June 26, 2011.
Okay, so a few years ago he's healthy, but we saw his grip strength coming in was 115. He had a weaker grip strength in the right arm and the left arm. We improved, and we actually improved more in the right arm. We got up to 162 in the right arm, which, 115 is borderline for me. If I see someone breaking well over that, then it gives me a lot of confidence that their UCL is protected because their flexor mass is strong enough to hold that joint together. Vertical jump, 26.8 inches vertical jump when he came in, 28.6 actually.
It's actually wrong. The other day I jumped at 29.6, so this was testing. That was actually under from what I jumped.
So cool. So just testing the other day. So like you said, I haven't done a recent eval as of today, so we would probably see even more gains here. Broad jump, 710 when he first came in, 810 a foot on broad jump. 10-yard went 155 to 153, so you got a little bit faster.
Probably not going to break records though.
Yeah. And then our med ball drills in the 3x Velocity program, he came in learning them. Chest up separation was 35 to 40. Guys of the program would like to know that. And then he improved to 42 on chest up, 47 on separation. He would have had the highest throw in here, but he's got Bob the Beast, who actually had a 48. He's been training with him.
The same day.
Same day.
I think I pissed him off. I think he had 48. But these numbers too, I was touching these numbers. Now I'm sitting at these just under these numbers where I'm sitting, but I was touching those barely.
So these are loaded throws. So he's improving in his loaded throws. Now, as far as his lifts, guy who barely ever cleaned at all, was at 115 pounds. Needed a lot of technique work up front. That's why I feel like it would have been nice to have more time, because he did need a good month of technique training.
And you have to be comfortable with that though too, because I came into this a little different. I was comfortable with taking time. I wanted to make sure I learned it right, learned it from the best people, and Brent here was teaching me every single day on it. And then I was worried then I wanted to increase strength with it. But if you just start doing it wrong, you're going to end up, that's when you put yourself in compromised positions. Do it right, do the lift correctly, even though your weight is down, you're actually doing it better, you're gaining more strength than doing it wrong and just throwing the weight up because you said you can.
And that's big coming from a guy with his major league experience. Olympic lifting is considered a very advanced form of strength training. A lot of strength coaches steer away from it with elite athletes. And it wasn't easy for David because mobility is very unique and he struggled with a lot of the rack positions. But just as he got better and got the mobility and got the strength, he felt more confident and things started to go. Now he had good days and bad days, and we worked later on to just go into high pulls because he got away from the frustration. But I know with David, like he said, he doesn't jump the gun. He really kind of makes sure he progresses, not too insanely, so he knows he's in the right place. But I know if David does this for another year, he'll just get better at it, better at it, better at it, better at it.
Yeah, there's no question. When I was getting up to the higher numbers, we got away from landing it. I was also throwing a lot. Every now and then I'd catch my wrist a little funny, and I just didn't want to put the pressure on it. But at the same time, I know when I started doing the high pulls, I was doing high pulls here easily with confidence. I'm landing that without a problem. It's just a matter of I just got away from that confidence of landing it. Which comes with more skill, which comes with just getting better every single time.
Yeah, and our goals initially coming in, that would have been our bottom goal. Ideally, 250 would have been ideal. And I think he still could use that 250, but that's something that we can continue to work for. On back squat, he went 225 to 310. That was really huge. Even his bench press, 135 to 245, really, really big. So you could see he was a big and strong guy because he picked up the strength so very fast once he started putting the loads on his body, which increased his lean mass, his total body strength. I truly believe he'll tell you, he's healthier now. He's more explosive now. And it's starting to show in his body biomechanics. He's starting to move more like he used to, and that's what we're going to look at now.
Yeah, and I want to do things that I used to do. Be a little young and stupid. I wanted to jump around and test things. When before I was getting away from it, like, oh, I'll just let them do it, let them be stupid. And it was like, what's stopping me? The only thing stopping me is not being able to do it. And so doing these things got me into running more, got me into jumping, trying to jump as high as I can. With all these young 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds that are in here, I was trying to beat them on everything, when before I would have just been happy with whatever I got. Now it frustrates me if I can't beat them, and it just makes me work a little harder until I do.
Yeah. So, the numbers, him coming in, now this was first day throwing in the facility, literally out of drills, and it was a light day for David. But his first time on the gun, he was 83. That's not where he normally is. We've progressed in literally 2 weeks to 90 consistently. So he's still in progression, because now he's starting to throw. He's going into preseason. So this progression is going to go and go and go. We project him 94 consistently. 93, 94 consistently would be where we project him.
Ideal.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and I truly believe when he gets more time on the mound, more time in competition, more throws in his arm, that's going to happen, because he's very, very, very early out of off-season training, where we didn't do a lot of mound work, pin work. Okay, so I think that's going to pick up significantly. Now, this is out of my biomechanics that I measure, my 3x pitch biometrics, which you can look at on the site, and you can see all this. I wanted to show progression biomechanically. So here's this 09, 14, and here was a week ago on the 22nd, and here was the other day where we were consistently 90. So we see this is my little proximal to distal measurement. Basically, I give you 5 points in the delivery. I'm not going to go over that here. You can get access to that by just looking for my 3x evaluation system. He scored a 0 in 09. He was doing a lot of things well, but in my measurements, could have done things more efficiently. More than likely, that's why he was injured.
Yeah, you look at it, I got a 0. Now, I was throwing extremely hard, having a lot of success, but I couldn't maintain that over the years. I was having issues with my legs. The second I had issues with my legs, I had issues with my arm. So you can tell, having a 0, you can be successful with a 0, but is that success sustainable over time? I'm proving that you can't.
Yeah, so it's like, we want to get back to this 09 numbers here. This was from some footage with him with the Mariners, but that would be one measurement we wouldn't want to get back to, right? So we can see this is going to be release point from the plate. 652 inches is where he released the ball from the plate. This is going to be peak lower body power, measuring the speeds of the ankle, knee, and hip. This is going to be peak upper body power, measuring the shoulder, elbow, and wrist. Actually, this was peak upper body power. These are the means. Now, the means are different. I'm not taking the top speeds. I'm taking all the speeds together through the entire delivery, first in the stride and then in the throw, and I'm averaging them and coming up with the means for lower body and upper body. And then this is different than release point to the plate. This is release point to the rubber. So about 100 inches from the rubber, which is going to be inches in X and Y, so you don't subtract that from 60 feet 6 inches, it'll throw you off. That's inches in X and Y. And these are ratings. Now, I rate guys based on science showing where there should be correlations to performance and injury potential. He was a 34 out of a 66. The higher the number, the healthier the arm, and it goes up to, I think, 70. This one goes up to 110. So it showed he had more room for potential, meaning he could have continued to throw harder, which this was, hard were you throwing in, 94?
Probably 94, 93, 94.
Yeah, so it's showing.
It was a spring training video, so it wasn't mid-season form.
So if he's throwing 99, 100, that performance potential rating will be a lot higher. Injury potential, there you go. The arm was not bad. It was probably average, but it could have been in healthier positions. But we can see here, the next year is last year is when he was not at his best. He was having issues enough to where he was looking for help. And you can see he's now farther from the plate. the peak lower body speeds considerably dropped from 342 in '09 to 207. But this is the interesting factor. The peak upper body speeds picked up. The shoulder, the wrist, and the elbow moved faster while the lower half was moving lower. We feel in theory that that could be an indication of why he wound up having Tommy John surgery and why he struggled, where he feels like he's going fast with his arm, but it's very different from how he moved in '09 because the lower body is not helping drive that upper body. Now these are just measurements of speeds. That doesn't mean force. There's ways to kind of figure out force, and force is going to be influenced by weight, distances, and stuff like that. So it's hard to take these numbers and throw it right into 93 miles an hour and try to figure out how they relate to each other. Don't really do that. You've got to take all the data together and then get an idea of how hard he's throwing. But just look how he's changing, okay? So we see definitely drop in the lower body. Now the mean speeds significantly in the lower body and the upper body, not as significant. But you can see, which was interesting, the peak speeds were higher in 14 than '09, but the mean speeds in the upper body were lower. That was interesting too. You're going to find that the peak speeds sometimes don't benefit ball speed as well as the mean speeds. That's what we truly believe. A lot of this data is new to us, and we're still trying to learn it, but that's kind of what we're feeling. Notice too, release point from the rubber was 87. Lost distances moving down the mountain. All right, not to get lost in all this, but just to show we've come back, okay? We've come back with the lower body, but our peaks went up in our upper body. So, and on our means, we're close in the lower body, a little bit far away in the upper body. So we knew a week ago we needed to get better at that. So he came out the other day and went up in ball speed, consistently went up in ball speed. His lower body peak speeds kind of went down, but still well above 14. And then his peak upper body speeds actually went down considerably, but mimicked more of 2009. His mean speeds considerably went up, which was what we were concerned about, even well above '09, which was good to see. Even though he's not back to the full distance from the rubber at 100 inches, he's still at 94. So more than likely, taking these speeds back to 100 inches from the rubber, also getting into some better angles. We need to get into some separation angles. We really believe that's going to put him right there, 93, 94, maybe more.
I mean, this shows you immediately what I was doing. If I had this information in 2011 when I first hurt my hip and had hip surgery, coming back from that, I felt great. I felt good and strong and quick. My upper body felt like it does now, where it's moving really, really fast. But at the same time, what this shows you is even 3 years later, healthy 3 years later, my hips were moving extremely slow. My peaks were slow, my means were really slow, but my upper body was moving really fast. So that's what happens. You go, okay, how do I overcompensate this? And I overcompensate not using my legs by using my upper body. So I'm putting a lot more stress on my shoulder, my elbow especially, and my arm. And so I picked up a lot of speed here, put a lot more stress on my elbow, end up tearing it. I guarantee you, by not having lower body strength, I'm coming off a hip surgery. I'm not as strong, I'm not as quick. I didn't really do anything to really jump those speeds up. All I did was rehab. And so it shows you what doing that, what happens to your body and how you overcompensate. But at the same time, I immediately have a drop in speed, even though I feel like I'm throwing hard. I think a lot of kids come in, are trying to throw really hard, become rotational, not really using their legs. They don't have the leg strength. They don't separate well, and then they end up becoming rotational, dropping their shoulders, throwing it around. Their peaks will be really high, but their means are low because they're not actually moving towards the plate. They're not moving the ball actually towards the hitter itself. They're just winging it. And so that's what I started doing, and now we're seeing that as my peaks with my legs actually go down, so I'm actually moving them a little slower, I'm actually moving them continually faster. So as I'm moving down the rubber, I'm continuing that movement. Instead of just really quickly spinning, I'm moving it like I did in 2009. I'm actually, with means a lot higher, my peaks dropped a little bit, but what we found here as being rotational, here as being extremely rotational with no lower body, here as being more linear and towards the rubber throwing extremely hard, and now I'm getting a lot closer to that. We're seeing trending along with that. And so it's a lot of theory. We're working on it. We're trying to figure out. We know we're rotational here in 2014. We know we were rotational here a week ago in 2015, but now we know, so we're starting to see the difference in numbers. We're seeing a drop in peak upper body, a drop in peak lower body, but at the same time a jump in velocity and a jump in means. So we're actually seeing my body using the power a lot better, down the rubber, down the mound, towards the hitter.
And that's one correlation I've seen. If you look at all the biometric profiles on the site, you look at all their mean upper bodies, all the guys that we know are the higher velocity guys, they're all pretty much around 1,000 inches per second. Now these numbers are inches per second. They're about 1,000 inches per second and up. So, and you can see here, on this day, he was about 3 miles an hour slower than he was on that day. And we can see on the day that he was consistently in the 90s, he was at 1,000 on the inches per second on mean. Even though in 09 he was only 972, but it's still close enough. I was saying guys that are close on the border of 1,000, that typically is showing to me a correlation between ball speed. So it's interesting to see that. Now, we went to looking.
One thing to look at really quick, one thing taken into consideration, this is January and January 31st, January 22nd, long before I'm used to being down the rubber, before I'm used to hitters, not as linear, you're just not going to be because you're just throwing against the wall. You don't have it all locked in yet. And my strength isn't there in my arm and my timing's not there. This is mid-season. So I'm throwing maybe the same speed as I was then, and you really see, the difference is I'm throwing with a lot more power, a lot more force. I'm just not necessarily timing it as well. So that just takes time with throwing. The more you throw to a hitter over time, the better you're going to get. That's where you're really probably going to see these numbers start to jump, is as my timing gets better, as physically I just get more used to facing hitters and going down the rubber. I might go backwards. I really don't think I will, because now I'm conscious of these things. But you can see I might have thrown the same speed, but you really see the difference is that I wasn't actually throwing the same. I'm not using my body the same.
Yeah, so a little bit more information. So it's going to get a little more detailed here. Now this is the front leg. So this is after, at front foot strike, as you're going into pitch release, that knee starts to wanting to come back.
You need to jump up so they can see it.
Yeah, I need to jump up. Sorry, just in the leg. All right. So the knee starts to come back, and we have a lot of studies that link the knee extension before pitch release to ball speed. You can see in 09, it came back at 18 inches per second. In 14, it slowed down to 6. Now we've jumped it all the way up to 42. So he's starting to get his front leg going. This is how long from maximum external rotation to pitch release, how many inches did he cover? He was 35 inches, dropped all the way down to 25 inches in 14, and now we're back to 32. Now we're getting, this is first move, the pitch release. I'm measuring how many frames from once your hip starts moving, so you release the pitch, how many frames. In 09, he completed his movement in 20 frames. He lost 3 frames, or gained 3 frames in 2014. Then we went back to 20, we sped up to 20 the other day. He slowed it down 1 frame, but we picked up some distances. Okay, so if we look at right here, we can definitely see, we don't see it there. We saw it here, or maybe not there. We saw it in the trunk positions. That's where we saw it. So the distances we picked up were in the trunk positions. We also picked up 2, which is not on here. If you look at when his hips came through, when he rotated his hips through, his hips pushed up farther. So his hips are actually farther, moving down the mound. And we're talking 1 frame here. So we're talking very small difference in distances, but I did see them in measuring where the hips were in the lower half and how far the trunk went.
It's 30 frames a second, so 1/30th of a second.
Yeah, exactly.
1/30th of a second, but at the same time, that's better than I was even. It's significantly better than it was in 14. And now but we have what the key to all this is, you have a frame of reference. You have something that you were, or another major leaguer that you can come by and look at and say, where am I compared to that? And now we know if this starts creeping into 23 and I'm not moving the same distance, now we know I'm moving much slower, significantly slower, because I was moving at a shorter distance, so taking more time to get there. Now we're moving a longer distance and taking less time to get there.
And it's interesting because if you look at a lot of low velocity guys, they're like 25, 28, 30 frames. I mean, it's significantly different. So I know we're talking little bitty frames here, but you'll see a big difference in the slower guys. Now this is taking from once you started moving forward, how fast your wrist was going, which is barely moving, to when you peak it, front foot strike, You can see, now, this isn't going to really ultimately tell the story. I'm just going to throw out some more detail here. He was 38.2 inches per second. That was his acceleration from first frame to pitch release. He actually gained, and that's probably because it's based on peak speed, so because his peak speeds went up. So his acceleration actually went up in 14, but we know that was in a shorter distance. We can see we actually peaked again in 15, or a week ago, 2 weeks ago, but now we're back down to 34 because we are focusing more on those mean speeds and more of those distances, so just another representation of what's going on. And then if you multiply acceleration by mass, which is body weight, you can get an idea of force production. You can see, which is interesting, we accelerated from 09 at around 7,800 to 14 to 8,500. We gained force production. We gained it again 2 weeks ago, but now we've dropped it all back down again because we're focusing on more how we keep that energy moving than how quickly we move it.
I mean, the key is moving down the route.
Yeah.
I was moving a lot more. I was more powerful, able to move it a week ago, but we know I'm moving it in the wrong direction. So you can move really, really, really fast, a tiny little movement. But the more I want to get down, the more I want to get down linear towards the rubber or towards the catcher, I'm going to move a little slower because I'm generating speed, and then hit my peak. All this right here, the 7831, I know I'm using that force directly to the catcher. Now I know I'm using this force not to the catcher, and then we see it in the speeds. And now I'm starting to use that force again towards the catcher. So you want this as high as you can, but you got to make sure that you're moving the distances and you have it with the means. So these numbers are going to be great. You want that high. And you want all these numbers, essentially you want them high, or in this case negative, but you need it towards the rubber, towards the catcher. So you need the means high, and you need your distances to them high. It's wonderful if you can move really fast and be really big, but if you don't actually gain ground towards the catcher in a linear movement, it means nothing. You're not using that force.
And you know what's brilliant, I think this really pulls it together, is the measurement or the metric of velocity. What is the difference between speed and velocity? Speed is a scalar, meaning it's just measuring how quick you're just firing off. So this is speed, just how fast is it moving in any direction at any time. That isn't truly what we're measuring on a gun. We're measuring velocity on the gun, which is speed in one direction. So velocity is speed in one direction. It's speed coming to the gun or away from the gun. So these speeds could be fired off, but what we're finding, if they're not specifically directed to the target, to the gun, it's not going to be represented in velocity, which is directional speed.
The fastest way to another point is in a straight line. So if I'm doing everything as fast as I can, even a faster motion here, versus actually driving to the catcher, you're going to have more force going in the direction you want, and it's going to end up being faster, which becomes velocity.
And the lesson here is added speed is not always best. What's best is directional speed. That's truly what's the best. Now, just one more step, which is pretty cool to see. Hips, how his hips are working. They were very inefficient when he broke down.
This is a big focus on us. One, my hips, we know my hips were moving slow. We could see it in video. Now we actually have the numbers. And I was injured with my hips. So this was a huge working piece for us throughout this whole process. The 4 months I've been here, we've been crushing hips, crushing hips, crushing hips. And then when I started yelling about not wanting to do it, we did it a little bit more. And so this has been a big, huge focus for us.
Right, so in 09, this is going to be peak hip speeds in phase 1, which is all the way to front foot strike. This is going to be peak hip speeds in phase 2, which is after front foot strike to pitch release. You can see in 09, he peaked his hips at 147 inches per second at front foot strike, and then they continue to peak next frame as he went into shoulder rotation. So he didn't hit his highest peak in front foot, and it continued next frame and then it tapered off. So we see it going up and then kind of tapering off. Then at 14, we see before front foot strike, at 89% of the movement, 100% being front foot strike. So before front foot strike, it peaked at 108, way less than 147. Then it had to come back down because it didn't peak again after front foot strike until 50% of the movement. So it came back down, hit front foot, and then peaked again. So we had this little up-down in the speeds of the hips, which is inefficient. We're picking up speed, losing speed, picking up speed.
So you're essentially showing that I didn't really use it. I peaked it early, so before I even landed, I'm driving as much as I can drive, as essentially just extending my leg. And then I let it sit there and it just came around. That's showing that it essentially just came around physically because I'm rotational, so I'm just going to throw it around.
And it probably came around the shoulder when he started pulling the glove side and bringing the shoulder.
But it shows that even though this number was high, there was no actual drive behind it because this number was low and this number was high. So it's actually, I'm just using my leg for a half a second, stopping, and then just throwing it around with my shoulder.
And what we know is it didn't convert well with his upper body. It wasn't as separated. But then he went 2 weeks ago. We still peaking it too early, but we peaked higher, 135, almost back to the 147, but 81% into the phase. And then it went back down, and then it jumped back up again, but a little bit earlier this time than in 14 at 168 at 25% of the phase, which is pretty much the next frame. But still inefficient, going up, down, up, down.
And the key to that lead, Brett said, do it later. Later, later, later. Drive later and faster, And
so we accomplished that. So we went later just the other day, 156, now above where we are in 09 at front foot strike, the moment front foot strike. It continued to peak, but it peaked a little bit late. So he was later, but almost too late. So there's always a point of being too late. So if he could have hit 189 at 25% of the movement, right into shoulder rotation, that would have been perfect. And that's probably more than likely what he's going to accomplish in the next few weeks. And that you'll show is that perfect incline of hip speeds, just like we had in 09. So now we can see we're back just a little bit late, which is probably why we were one frame over there, which is probably why, all the other measurements come into play.
One frame less, I'm at 160, I'm at 189, 25%. I mean, it shows you that I'm using my legs a lot better. We focused on my legs, we focused on my hips, but you can still see that my arm, my shoulder is still coming with my hip a little bit. I'm still a little rotational, not separating as far as I want to. And I tell Brett, I know what it feels like. We talk about it all the time. I know what it feels like to throw hard. I know what it feels like to drive my legs extremely hard, extremely quick with separation. I've done it. I've felt it hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. Now I don't have that feeling anymore. And that's a constant search. I'm telling Brett, though, this is the first time I feel it in my legs, that I'm driving out my legs. I'm getting the same drive I always had, if not more. So I feel better. I'm going down the mountain farther. I'm hitting it more explosively. But I still feel my shoulder going with it. And I can really feel that now. So that's our next focus, is keep these numbers where they are, maybe a little quicker if I can, and then really focus on the separation. Really get my arm up to at the last second and pop that shoulder up as I'm landing, and then let it go. Let my hips, once my hips get through, then fire. And I haven't done that in a long time, and that's going to be the separator from 90 to 95. And I think once I hit that, there's no stopping me. It's just basically how fast can I move. Yeah. And I know I can move that fast, so that number becomes obsolete, and it becomes back to where it was in 2009.
Yeah, and that's the confidence we had coming in this. That's why I said I see David, no doubt, 95 plus, because you can see it's still not there. We can see, like we said, starting this, we are on the perfect road to progression. He's no longer regressing. He's back into progression. It's just the farther he goes down this road, the closer he gets back to being that high block, that high 90s guy again. Now, last thing to look at, the chin speeds going forward after front foot strike. We're 210 inches per second, slowed all the way down to 108. So he hit front foot in 14 and it was barely going. There was speeds, it was more rotational, but there wasn't that dump or that directional movement of velocity through the trunk to the target, which we then see picks up 2 weeks ago, slowed down a little bit, but still not there. So that's really, to me, and he knows that, that's when the upper body's separating and then it's going linear again. He's not rotational, and he knows he's back. When we see those peak up, back to 210, and we see those angles get out, that's when we know he's finally there. And more than likely, that's when he's 95 plus.
So what's telling in all of this is I came into this with 5 years post-injury or 4 years post-injury with no plan, no idea what was making me unsuccessful compared to what I was before, thinking that it was all just I need to get my arm up, I need to get my arm up. I 4 years of major league pitching coaches without a real plan and without a real reason. And now from 4 months with Brent, with these numbers that really opened our eyes and showing me exactly where we need to go, exactly where I was, and exactly how to get there. So we know with all these strength numbers, all the mobility numbers, increasing those as much as I can, increasing the performance numbers as much as I can, and now we know exactly where it's showing on my pitching, where I need to improve, and it's giving us a roadmap where to go instead of just blindly assessing video and saying, well, I think I'm moving a little slower, my arm's not really separating, what do? I just get my arm up. Or it's all on my front side. We had this big discussion whether my front side's opening up or whether I'm actually just not driving more. Well, we started showing once I started driving a little bit more, my front side's calmed down. And so we know exactly where to go. It's remarkable to actually have this information, have somebody be able to give it to you and tell you how to get what you're doing wrong, how to do it right, and the roadmap of where to go from there. And
It's game changing.
And if I had this information in 2011 when I hurt my hip, tried to come back from that, started throwing upper body as hard as I can, low on my elbow, I think it would have changed my career for the last 4 years without a doubt.
Yeah, that's just, to me, what gives me chills and blows my mind. When you have someone with his experience saying, if I would have had this level of information, at the moment my body started breaking down, where I could actually see what was going on, it would have changed my career. And he's saying that not just a big leaguer who has that understanding, but anyone in any level who wants to take the time to learn this stuff is going to have the same insight into their career and be able to see exactly what's going on. That's the true value here. It's going to help everybody. And that's what I want to do. I want it to trickle down and help everybody. I'm not just doing it to help someone at his level. I would love for it to help someone at a high school level because, he was a first-round draft pick. Not a lot of guys get to have the road that he's had. So this will also give you the opportunity to probably have a better chance in your career coming up. And so it can work both ways. It can work on the end of your careers, and it can work in the beginning of your careers. But that's good. I mean, we've gone pretty long here. I hope this helps. I appreciate you guys listening. I really appreciate having David here. It's been an amazing experience. Keep an eye out for him this year. He's working his way back in the bigs. And you can reach out to him. Give him your Twitter handle.
Yeah, at the DA53.
Yeah, and he's the coolest guy in the world. You finally, everyone loves Trevor Bauer because he's in the space online, sharing what he's doing, what he's working on. Here's another guy. You've got a guy with even more experience right now than Trevor, and you can tap into what he's learning. And he's like I said, this guy will reach out to you. You tweet him up. He's going to come back at you and answer all of your questions. So I would highly suggest you use him as a good resource because he's that kind of guy and he wants to help.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
All right. And, we'll keep this going. If you have any questions to me, shoot them out at me, but we really appreciate it, and we'll check you out next time.
Yeah, and again, this isn't the end of the road for me, so these things have to get better, and I can't quit now. So, as Brent's, the program's never done, so we just got to keep working.